Thank God that's over. South Carolina gets to their fifth straight Final Four after beating Duke in the Elite Eight. We talk about the come-from-behind victory, the MVP of the day, and if the South Carolina women's team can win a back-to-back national title, especially after the last two games. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Hope everyone is having a fantastic Monday morning or late Sunday evening, depending on when you are watching this. Before we get started, I want to say thank you. Give a quick shout out to our friends and listeners that make Locked On Gamecocks our first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel.com today. All right. Maybe I just stop predicting games, for one. Maybe we start there. Maybe I don't know, maybe we enjoy the win a little bit and not only talk about how much of a nervous wreck we all were for 4 straight quarters again, but regardless of how you felt during the game, the amount of stress that was happening for those 4 quarters, especially in the second half, massive weight lifted off your shoulders. South Carolina comes from behind, second straight game where they trailed in the fourth quarter. They win against Duke, and they clinch a spot in their 5th straight Final Four. Tremendous win, scary win for the second straight week. And, you know, it was kind of more of the same from the past 2 games, including this one. Some of that's good, some of that's bad. I don't want this to come out and start in the negative light because of how close that game was and all the things that happened and South Carolina did really to themselves that caused it to be that close. First and foremost, it's the 5th straight Final Four. Like one of 4 coaches in the history of the sport to do that. Don Staley has done it already, basically in the first decade of her career. 5 straight Final Fours. You could argue, honestly, it's almost harder to get to the Final Four sometimes than it is to win a natty, especially in men's. Getting to 5 straight, it almost seems more impressive than winning just one. So congrats to the team. Congrats to Don Staley and everyone that was there in Birmingham for the win. Massive, massive win. Huge, point of pride and feather in the cap for the program as well. Now, getting there, in hindsight, those games are fun. During the game, I personally did not have a ton of fun for the second and third and part of the fourth quarter because of what was going on. Going into that game, you'd already played Duke. You beat them by double digits, like way earlier in the season. You knew what they presented, like defensively. They're a better defensive team, and you also knew what they try to do offensively. You already played them, right? Their last time out, they play UNC to get to the Elite Eight against South Carolina, one of the lowest scoring games of the tournament. I just thought that this South Carolina team would come out, especially with the way they looked against Maryland, where they trailed for most of the second half in that game. I mean, they didn't regain the lead until late in the fourth quarter. I expected them to come out with their hair on fire, refocus, re-energize, and put Duke away. Now, to be fair, Duke is a really good team. There's a reason why they're 29-8, reason why they're a 2 seed. They're a top 10 team. They seemingly always are. They're a really good team, so it shouldn't take anything away from Duke. You just keep waiting for this South Carolina team to put their foot on the gas and look like the teams of old. And I hate to say it, but this team is not that. That doesn't mean they can't win a national championship. It just means that this team is not that. There's probably plenty of South Carolina, like I always compare everything to football, South Carolina football teams that were not as talented as some of the years past, but they still had the same amount of wins or had a bigger win or a big upset or whatever. Things change from year to year. This team, as talented as they are, the Tim McDonald's All-Americans, the unbelievable roster they put up, they are not the same team as they were in years past. Part of that, in my opinion, is that you don't have a force in the very middle of that team that you can say, like, you have to go get us a bucket, go win us a game. A.J. Wilson is not walking through that door. But sometimes when you don't have the one person that you can go to, heroes step up all over. And that's been the case over the last several weeks, over yesterday, or the game against Indiana 2 days ago. Sorry, Maryland 2 days ago, with Fulwiley and what she did off the bench. Today, Sania Feagin, what she was able to do, especially in the fourth quarter. What I thought was most interesting about this game, and what like my biggest takeaway from the win, there is so much talent on this team. A lot of it's young, and it felt like when you got punched in the mouth and you were going late into the fourth quarter trying to figure out what do we need to do to get a win and get out of here alive and get to the Final Four. Dawn Staley calls a timeout, puts her most veteran lineup that she can on the floor, 4 seniors and Chloe Kitts all go out there on the floor, tells them, go get me a win. Go get a win. Find a way to win. Exact quote, find a way to win. And they did. And they did. Now, it was a surprising way they got there, right? We talked about, like, you come out on fire to start, and you're up in the first quarter 16-10. Again, you find yourself on top early, like they have in every single game they have played in this tournament, getting out to a good start, right? Except for Indiana, right? But the last 2 games, that's what we kept talking about going into the weekend. Got to get off to a good start. Cannot start like 4 of 20, in the first quarter and a half of play like they did against Indiana, because you're going to get, somebody will jump up and get you as you get later into the tournament with better teams. You had the good starts. The second and third quarter, I don't know what happened over the last 2 games, but it has been not good, especially offensively. This game, you are up 25-14. 25-14 with 6 minutes and 16 seconds left in the second quarter. You're in complete control of this game. You're up by double digits. Everything's going fine. They score 1 point. 1 point until the 8-minute mark of the third quarter. They scored 1 more point before half. That is one of the more frustrating things. And listen, like, sports hard, right? Like it's hard. You can't just go out there and it's going to rain threes every single game. You're going to be efficient as possible inside. Like, sometimes you're not going to score 80, 90, 100 points. We've seen this team do it. We've seen a lot of Dawn Staley teams do it. Sometimes you have to go figure out a way to win when you're only scoring in the 50s and 60s. They have found a way to do that the last 2 weeks, or last 2 games. But it's still cause for concern, because what is happening offensively in the middle parts of games where everyone disappears? Everyone. Like, at one point, they had only 2 rebounds in the entire quarter. The entire quarter. That was in the third quarter. They only got 2 rebounds. South Carolina has been the best, or one of the best, rebounding teams in the entire country for the entire season. They got out-rebounded 30-41 on the glass today. I've seen them get out-rebounded before this season. Not a lot. Not by 11. That was shocking. Shocking. Also, the bench. The bench, you saw it last game out. They were incredible. They also averaged 40, like, South Carolina gets an average of 41 points per game from bench players. It's the most in the country. You had 9 tonight. 9. So, yeah, that's obviously a cause for concern, and just really, more than anything, uncharacteristic of this team. It's not what we have seen. And I don't want to be a sunshine pumper and overly optimistic and too positive, when there deserves to be some criticism for whatever is happening in the middle parts of games. But that being said, you're still finding a way to win. And when you don't have the one person that can take over a game, you don't have a Paige Beckers, you don't have a Juju Watkins, whatever, and you've had those players in the past, it forces someone else to step up and be the hero. And you saw it once again when they needed it most, backs against the wall, win or go home. South Carolina was able to find a way to win and put the clamps down and win a ball game. Now, they did, and the refs did everything in their power to make that as difficult as possible. That charge that was called with less than 30 seconds left when Carolina had a 2-point lead was unbelievable. I was shocked. You can't, on an inbound, you cannot make that call. Anyway, but it shows you, and this is not anything necessarily negative about the player from Duke who shot it, but in big moments, some players step up, like you saw Sania Feagin, like in this game, or Fulwiley last game. Chloe Kitts in almost every game this postseason and dating back to the end of February, she's been a force, had 14 points and 4 rebounds again today. Some people are able to do that and step up when the moments at its biggest and the lights are brightest. Luckily, the player at Duke who put up the 3 airballed it, and that was your ball game. It is the oldest cliche when it comes to the NCAA tournament and postseason basketball, and it could not be any more true. Survive in advance, survive in advance, survive in advance. Not a hugely impressive win for South Carolina. Once again, 10-point favorite, only won by 4. Last game against Maryland, they were 17-point favorite, won by less. I think maybe it was 4 again. I don't know. But you're not trying to cover a spread. You're not trying to get glamour points or style points and put up 100 points in every game. You're trying to get to the next game, get to the next round, and then finally, hopefully at the end of that road, it's the final game of the season, and you're hoisting up yet another title and trophy like you did a year ago. Now, the other part of this game that I was really impressed with, in kind of going through some of the stuff here, one of the things that jumped out that was kind of odd was South Carolina only shot 8 3-pointers. There were 3 of 8 from deep. Chloe Kitts hit one in the first quarter from like deep, but they were only 3 of 8 from deep, which is not surprising that they shot 37%. That's a great percentage. What was surprising was the last timeout, right? That is not what this team looked like. I brought up the 9 points off the bench and the 8 total attempts from deep. Last week or in the last game, you had, let me add it up real quick. You had 40 points from the bench. 40 points from the bench against Maryland, 9 against Duke. You shot 15 threes, but you only made 4. So way more efficient this time around. Was still surprised they didn't put more shots up from there. But all in all, listen, got to the free throw line a decent amount, got 20 free throws up, hit 13 of them. Probably could have been a little bit better there. The thing that impressed me the most, though, we talk about like points, rebounds, like style, like flashy stats and things that are going to be talked about the most, like either on Twitter, social media, SportsCenter, whatever. The stuff that doesn't show up is the stuff that won them the game today. And that sounds super cliche, and it probably is. But like you look at the way that Raven Johnson and Sania Feagin played in the final minutes of this game, after Don Staley said, find a way to win. I mean, I got chills thinking about it. Go find a way to win. 4 of her seniors and Chloe Kitts, and then lo and behold, they do find a way to win. Listen, it wasn't even just that you were trailing in the fourth, like in a back and forth game. I mean, you're trailing you're ahead at halftime. That had been a problem in the last 2 games as well. But in the third quarter, like going into halftime, you allowed an 8-1 run to close the half. Can't happen. Then you come out in the third quarter. I told you they only had two rebounds. One of those is a team rebound, by the way. And then you give up 20 points in the third quarter, and you go into the fourth trailing by 4. And it wasn't like you got it back immediately. Just like the Maryland game, it was a back and forth, uncomfortably late into the game. The positive side of that is, one, the seniors, unbelievable job. Feagin, this is her stat line here, had 12 points, great. But she had 8 rebounds, had 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Raven Johnson, just all over the place, 7 points, 5 rebounds, 3 steals, 1 block. Those 2 players combined for 6 steals and 3 blocks. That is massive. Massive. And especially in a game where you needed it, when you had a lot of turnovers again. I think you had 13 in this game. So incredible job by them doing this stuff that doesn't always show up, like I said in the stat sheet, but it's the stuff that wins you games. And even though these 2 games aren't great wins or wins by a ton of points or anything like that, you got the win. And now you also know that you can find a way to win. And I think going into the next round, like going into the actual Final Four, one, it almost feels like a little bit of a relief to go see who they could play next, whether it's Texas or TCU. Those 2 will play tomorrow night. The winner of that game is who South Carolina will get in round 1 next Friday. Yeah. For the Final Four. So you don't draw UCLA, which is great because you already lost to them and they're the number 1 overall seed. But what you do end up getting is a familiar foe in Texas, who you're 2-1 against this year, and the last time out you beat them by 19, held them under 50 points. Or you get TCU, who Haley Van Lith is awesome, and they're playing great right now. But you've already played them as well, and you beat them by like 27. So, the other side of the bracket, a little bit more tough. You have UConn or USC is going to play UCLA. I would assume it'll be UConn, especially with Juju Watkins out. But UConn and UCLA have both beaten you this year, right? I know Texas has as well, but you're also 3-1 against those two teams from the pool of who you would play this season as well. So I feel good going into that game way more than I do about like an unknown Maryland team that you don't have a ton of info or tape on and like all that kind of stuff. And also, as good as those teams are, they're not built the same as Maryland is. And that's also not taking anything away from Duke, because they're a great team and did a great job, especially coaching. Like the ball screens gave this South Carolina defense fits all game long. But going into the Maryland game especially, it's tough to beat a team that's built that way. Sometimes you run into buzzsaws like that in the postseason and in the NCAA tournament. Luckily, South Carolina was able to weather the storm in both those games, and in the Indiana game after the first half there, won all three, and now you get to the Final Four. There's concerns, man. There's definitely concerns. The 54 points was not a great offensive showing. The inability to put anybody away and then also kind of just go missing in the middle of the game, that is very, very concerning. But all that being said, now you get a familiar face if you've already beaten. Now you also have 2 wins in your back pocket. We know how to win late. Nothing is going to phase us moving forward in the tournament. At the very least, you are tested and ready to go. So if you get down late in another game, which will probably happen against the level of opponent you're going to face in the Final Four, you're unfazed. You're unfazed. And you've also found a way to win in so many different ways with so many different people. Today was the seniors going out there, playing mistake-free in the fourth quarter, getting huge turnovers, and do phenomenal defense in the final several minutes of that game. And again, when your offense is struggling, you were able to have you weren't firing on all cylinders. Not all the pieces were in place that it feels like you usually have for a South Carolina team or win. You played great defense, but the offense wasn't great for a quarter and a half. And we have seen them kind of try to piece together this puzzle of getting a win in the last few games, and they've been able to do it. It has not been by 20-plus points like we saw at the end of the regular season, but this team is still on a winning streak that dates back to that UConn loss. So I think they're going to go to Tampa, refocus. I love the fact they will get Texas. I love the fact that, or maybe it's TCU, I don't know. Get some rest. Also, that team plays tomorrow night. The winner of that game plays tomorrow night, so they will have one less day of rest, which is that's a great advantage to have. So go to Tampa and then figure things out from there, because at least in the first round, you have a really good opportunity. I think obviously there's way more confidence winning that game than what's after it. But go get that win, survive, advance, and then move on. All right, that is all for today's show. Before we go, I do want to give a quick shout out again to our friends at FanDuel. Listen, tournament's almost over, but it's still here for another week. We have the Final Four for women's and men's heading into next weekend. And with March Madness being here, FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. Listen, I love using FanDuel for a lot of reasons, but mainly the in-game live updates where you can get live odds. You can place other bets. Maybe you think a player is going to come on late in the second half, like we saw several times in the NCAA tournament this weekend. They have all of that at your fingertips, all at your disposal, and all of it for you to make the most money possible and the easiest game action as well. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly with no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com. Get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.